Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
Quiet Riot. Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot Sunday School, the weekend mystery coach tour to our midweek luxury safari. Hallelujah. 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 I'm Naomi.
And I'm Kenny. Probably less hungover than you are today, Naomi, but...
I am one of those annoying people that doesn't really get hangovers. I'm so sorry to say.
What?
But I am tired. I get tired.
Okay.
And
how do you not get hangovers?
Well, we're recording this the day after I went to a Christmas party and got home at 3:30.
Yes.
And it is now 11ish the following morning, and I'm awake. I'm fine. Just a bit sleepy, but no, I don't sort of get like savage headaches or being sick and stuff like that, much to the annoyance of anyone I've been out with the night before.
You're despicable. I mean, I went out last night and somebody gave me a double Talisker, and my head is telling me this morning, what did you have the whiskey for? It was one glass. This is not fair.
I'm also one of the really annoying people that remembers everything.
Okay.
I'll remember everything everybody said, everything everybody did.
You're basically like going drinking with AI, aren't you? You just make random facts up as well.
Well, yeah, they can't challenge me. We've got so much that we could talk about today, Kenny.
Totally, yeah.
I was out when the news broke that Trump had released this new security strategy. I don't know if you saw that, but it's a real attack on Europe.
I mean, it's such an obvious playbook now, but now, I mean, we've had almost a year of it, and yet, even though I should just open that sort of news and sigh, shake my head and go, don't worry, there'll be some other craziness next week. It's still worrying because every time he does this, he ramps it up a little bit more, doesn't he?
And loads of other stuff is happening in my world as well, because there's a really fast-moving environment happening around all things EU, UK, etc. We've talked a bit about the collapse in the talks of UK getting access to that 150 billion Security Action for Europe fund. Rumours are that Canada have now successfully negotiated access to it. It'll be interesting to see what price they've had to pay for that.
Yeah,
it's rumoured that it's in the hundreds of millions, not in the billions that the EU is expecting the UK to cough up. And I think this is a really smart move by Canada. And you've got Mark Carney, elbows up basically to Trump. Mark Carney, who was governor of the Bank of England, is clearly an Anglophile, now in a thing that the UK are, not managing to get into. So that can't hold, surely. And like I've always thought, if the UK does ever rejoin the EU, and God willing it will do it in a cohort with others that will make it much more difficult for its application to be blocked. And when we first joined, we joined with a bunch of other countries, and I said it on this show many times, I would dearly love us to join alongside Ukraine. But then there's been loads of stories that came out again while I was out drinking.
Stay home next week.
About the youth mobility arrangement between the UK and the EU, now being referred to as the Youth Experience Scheme. Best of Britain have got a really substantial intervention happening on the 10th of December into that. Whether the EU have got wind of it and they've sort of come out early, but there's been a few reports, Guardian, Times, and a few others, that they're sort of saying our demands are this, and basically they would like an uncapped scheme, so completely limitless in number, which we know UK Home Office will find really difficult to say yes to, and hopefully that's just them pitch rolling ahead of what's happening next week, which is Maros Shefčovič and Nick Thomas-Simmers having a meeting in Brussels on the 10th of December. obviously the two lead negotiators. And that's all coming fresh off the back of David Lammy, Justice Secretary, being pushed on whether a customs union would be good for UK economic growth, and him conceding that yes, it would.
Yeah.
And I believe the Lib Dems are going to try and move a 10-minute rule bill in the coming week on the UK joining a customs arrangement, rather like Turkey has with the EU. So there's just so much happening in my world, just as we were all hoping to quieten down ahead of Christmas.
Not going to happen, is it? And it's get the feeling that there's a tipping point's been reached in terms of what sort of things people are prepared to discuss in polite circles and publicly about our relationship with Europe. The last few weeks have seen interventions from various parts of the political spectrum as well. I mean, do you get that feeling yourself from your behind the scenes work?
Yes, of course. And I also want to blow the Best of Britain trumpet. We didn't leave the pitch. We never gave up. And so many other pro-Europeans did. And now that the tide is turning again, they've all re-emerged. Well, where were all of you during the dark years?
Yeah.
Where were all of you when it looked like, Johnson had won an 80-seat majority, was going to drive through a really hard Brexit and get a second term? And then when we had a Labour government elected with extremely stringent red lines, and everybody was talking about the fact that there was absolutely no way we could have anything more than what was contained within their red lines. And now all of a sudden it is. And I'm so proud of the work that we've done, that we never, ever shied away from doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think partly because, and when you sort of objectively look at it, Best of Britain probably shouldn't still exist. It probably should have failed. And I think campaigns led by other people may have done, but my team have just been relentless because they believed in it.
I mean, I'm able to give you a shout out as well as somebody who's external to the organisation now. And, from my perspective, this was always the plan with you. You never planned to give up the fight even once it became clear that there was a disaster looming. In fact, in some ways, even more so once it was clear there was a disaster looming. And it's not just about campaigning and staying in the field. I mean, running an organisation like Best for Britain involves all the politics behind the scenes. It involves fundraising, it involves all the admin. There's all the dull stuff and non-sexy stuff that people never really get to hear about. And it's been challenging these last few years because the political world really worked so hard to try to not talk about the issues that were going on, while you and that immense team that you've got really were banging the drum. Sometimes it felt like you were banging the drum all by yourselves. And I dare say it might have felt like that for you as well.
It did. Anyway, enough of the blowing smoke up our asses. Kenny, despite all of that we could do a whole episode on each of those topics, I think today we need to look at a couple of lesser reported news stories.
Okay, that's a good idea.
And let's start with political bias on social media, specifically the work that some of my team at Best of Britain have done on the TikTok algorithm. Got some interesting stuff to share on that.
Cool, okay. And I thought we could have a cautious look at the return of national service on the back of Germany and France both leading into voluntary national service schemes. I imagine that it all sounds a bit uncomfortable for at least some of our audience, but there is a genuine debate to be had about potential benefits and drawbacks.
Right, now I am much more about prescription than conscription.
Hey.
Pass me the painkillers, let's crack on.
Okay, bless. Listeners, you can hear the sort of sacrifice that's involved in producing this show from Naomi. And if you fancy chucking a few digital coins in our online hat, pop over to ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod and sign up to support us for as little as £5 a month. For those of you who have asked, yes, of course, you can buy us a beer as well. Hello, Rich in Topsham. Also, you can buy us aspirin, Alka-Seltzer, and family-sized packs of Barocca too.
I'm having flashbacks to therapy with Andrew's liver salts.
Quiet Riot. Social media bias likely isn't news to anyone listening to this show. We all know major platforms tilt the table, and we know which way they tilt it as well. What's less obvious is that the bias doesn't start with you. It's not your viewing habits, your politics, or your guilty midnight scrolling that decides what lands in your feed, it turns out. The bias is baked into the system long before you touch your phone. Now, some of Naomi's team at Best for Britain went undercover on TikTok to look at this issue in a bit more depth, and they found something grimly disturbing, if not entirely unpredictable. You don't need to lean far right to be fed far right content. It transpires that the algorithm will quite happily push you out there on its lonesome. And why? Well, that's because it prioritizes what performs, not what's healthy. And extreme content outperforms reality almost every time. By coincidence, this content tends to be somewhat right-leaning. Funny that. So, regardless of your viewing habits, social media reflects not who you are, but what the platform wants you to become. A highly engaged, mildly adrenalized user who keeps scrolling even when the content drifts into political extremes that you never asked for. In other words, the bias isn't personalized, it's industrial, and it can shape the political weather long before any human makes a choice.
Hi everyone, it's me, Elon Musk, and I want all my supporters worldwide to kindly follow up my new TikTok account.
So that was Elon Musk launching his own TikTok account the other day. He's got his own social media platform, of course, which you may have heard of, and it's not without controversy. But with that in mind, Naomi, give us a little bit more detail about what your team did and why you chose TikTok from all the platforms for this bit of work.
So we've been very interested in TikTok and growing our own presence there. But in order to do that, we wanted to find out a lot more about how it works. And we're doing a huge amount of work on decoding populism as well with Liam Byrne MP, and really trying to understand, how populism thrives, the rhetoric that works to engage people, etc. And so our brilliant social media manager set up two completely different accounts from scratch. George 2006 and John 1987. So two young men, they've recently joined TikTok, except they're not really young men, of course, they are us.
Right.
And we wanted to see how quickly they were served what kind of content. They were set up, located in different parts of the UK. The accounts were created on different days using different IP addresses. And within, and I mean minutes, with no input from us, no following of anything, no searching for any term, the algorithm fed both of the accounts racist and Islamophobic content.
Really?
Right? So, it's a really different kind of model than other social media platforms. So if you are a Facebook user, you will know that unless you're following friends and colleagues and whoever you've connected with, there won't really be much in your feed. That isn't what happens on TikTok. They've got the FYP, the For You page, and it will serve content that literally from the second you open the app, that they think is tailor-made for you. So all the algorithm has at this point is a name, an age, and a location. To avoid all of that, we just made sure we didn't follow anything at all. And then George's account, I believe, went live late morning in Kent. And the first piece of content he saw was GB News video.
The very
at
first
just
piece.
after midday.
Right.
So that was within 5 minutes. And it was a GB News piece focusing on why immigration is terrifying and we should all be worried about it. And from then it went into multiple videos criticizing all sorts of things that the current government is doing. And then within minutes, you get Nigel Farage content. Very similar thing happened with the other account. Great replacement theory, conspiracy videos coming up, lots of white supremacy stuff, lots claiming that white populations are being replaced by people of color, Islamophobic videos claiming that Muslims pose a threat to our values and our culture. Now, look, we're not great undercover investigative journalists. We're just interested campaigners trying to understand how this stuff works. So I don't want to, make it sound like we're doing the job of of others. And there is a whole raft of research out there about all of the different platforms. And in particular, Global Witness have done an investigation in Romania on TikTok's algorithm, serving nearly 3 times more far-right content than all other political content, and twice as much as it does in Poland, ahead of the Romanian elections that happened last year. So, we're just interested and worried and trying to make sense of how the right is effectively grappling with this and using it to their advantage, and how the left is pretty absent by comparison in fighting fire with fire.
And it's probably worth just flagging up how important TikTok has become in the political sphere for some of our listeners. I know plenty of you out there are either refugees from X or still on that platform. Plenty of you use Blue Sky as well. But not everybody who follows Quiet Riot is going to have a TikTok account or engage with it at all. But TikTok has been ginormous, hasn't it, in terms of doing lots of the heavy lifting amongst younger people and not so young people as well in some cases.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Nigel Farage has more than 1.3 million followers on TikTok at the moment. Keir Starmer and Ed Davey are not on the platform at all. The parties are doing better. So Labour has about 250,000 followers. Greens have got about 160,000. The Lib Dems just 57,000. So even combined, they're only just keeping up with the Reform UK's official party TikTok account, which has got about a third the number that Farage himself has got. Zach Polanski's woken up to it. He's got about 130,000 followers and is using it quite effectively. And in Germany, again, the left did begin to wake up to it ahead of the general election they had. And Die Linke, the left-wing party, was polling at about 5% or a bit below that in terms of the threshold required to enter parliament in their system. But actually, come election day, it managed to get up to 8.8%. And part of its success has been attributed to its performance on TikTok and really trying to get in there ahead of polling day. So I think to avoid further polarization, parties on the centre-left and left of the UK are going to have to find a way to break into that audience, to go to where people are rather than trying to drag them towards the party.
I mean, there's two elements to this issue in terms of left versus right. I think anyway. There's if you like, the legislative side where stuff is being sent and provided to people that they don't want, is upsetting. But there's also that classic left versus right communication issue where historically, and certainly in the last few years, parties and pressure groups on the right of the political spectrum are so much more effective at grabbing whatever communication channels are there and doing it properly is probably not the right word in the context of what Best for Britain have been uncovering, but doing it as if they mean it, and getting onto the field of play and dominating it. And like you say, it really is incumbent on those on the other side of the political spectrum to find ways of getting on there, because it's all very well for us all to complain about it, but if there isn't an alternative, we've just left the field wide open.
Yeah. What are regulators or governments around the world doing about algorithmic bias and things like that? Is there anyone actually trying to tackle it from that regulatory perspective?
I mean, enforcement is finally starting to catch up in Europe, at least. And this week, there was a bit of a step forward. Under the EU's Digital Services Act, the European Commission slapped Elon Musk and X with a £105 million fine for violations that include misleading verification. That's the blue tick system that X uses, where once upon a time, it was only famous people and significant people who'd got the blue tick on X, and then Musk very quickly turned that into a you get verification if you give me some money operation. There's also opaque advertising practices, and there was a refusal by X to grant public data access to researchers as well, which has really wound up the EU, and there's still a couple of investigations ongoing on that front, so we've not heard the last of this story yet. Beyond that, regulators have launched further investigations to probe whether platforms' recommendation algorithms, what we were just talking about, systematically amplify extremist or harmful content. In other words, whether bias is baked in to the very architecture of feed design.
Quiet Riot. If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo. Quiet Riot.
And let me ask you this as a paper guy. Can you feel a trend emerging for a return to hard copy readership? I feel like it might be a slow but growing trend. I know so many people want to put their phone down. I know so many people that are, trying to digital detox, trying to have less screen time. And, book readership is up. We know that people are enjoying buying books again and trying to consume information and interesting things in other domains. And I just wonder if not necessarily the existing print media, but maybe new entrants to it could begin to become a much more palatable alternative for people to keep abreast of what's going on in a way that isn't so algorithmically driven.
I'd love to say yes, that I'd see that happening. Look, print has, in all its forms, has gone through ups and downs over the years, and it's a very different way of consuming media, as we all know. Whether that's books, magazines, or indeed legacy newspapers.
I mean, as an editor, you had to make a decision because you've only got a certain number of pages. You can only increase your number of pages if you can increase the number of ads that go in it to make it commercially viable, whatever. But at the end of the day, there has to be that editorial decision. Like, okay, this is the most important thing our readers need to know. That thing that is also interesting, we have neither time, space, nor money to run. And that is just the problem that digital got around. It could always have limitless amount of content.
It did. And one of the other issues that digital has got round, and in the process created a brand new issue, is the fact that that editing process itself has now become very much more digitalized. Less so obviously in the print titles yet, because of the inevitable time delay that's involved in producing an old-fashioned newspaper. But the news websites, the big news websites, have all, for some time now, been using different pieces of software to, if you like, pre-screen stories quite often. And I know in the PR world, I've heard lots of people saying, they've gone to trusted journalists with decent stories, and journalist has said, we've checked, and that sort of story didn't get the clicks the last time. That sort of story is not going to get us the eyeballs. So while on an old-fashioned newspaper magazine, you were relying on instinct and experience a lot of the time, in fact, all the time, really, you were really balancing that idea that some stories go in because they're important, regardless of what I think of the story. But other stories are going in because I think that's quite quirky. I think that's a bit good news. I think, there's something inside me that says, yes, this is right for our audience. They'll get it. And an awful lot of that has been stripped out. And, we've talked about it on this show before, the fact that you've now got lots of places where copy itself is written or rewritten by AI programs. It's fed out. And the whole system becomes very sterile. And that's a huge issue. The other thing about print, though, is in some ways kind of like LPs, that it's become cool.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting to. Could we eventually see a stage where news platforms or platforms that contain a lot of news sort of become the CD of the media world. It's cool to, either have your latest Spotify Unwrapped or a beautiful old LP and lovely record player in the corner of the room.
It's also a very different reading experience. It's not just about what you're consuming, it's about how you're consuming it. And there's a huge difference between being stuck on the underground or on a bus and doom scrolling on your phone and reading a book or reading a magazine or reading a newspaper as well.
We are now just not occupying the same spaces that we were. A lot of people are now not driving or driving electric vehicles. So the petrol station forecourt where you had the plastic covered boxes for the newspapers with all the headlines there in a wall along each other. We're getting home delivery, not going to the supermarket where you, on the way in with the trolley, you might have grabbed a copy of the Mirror or whatever before you went and got your groceries. Getting a hard copy product to people. So that is presumably, if you want to be a new entrant, going to have to be things like saying, okay, I think people who do a Gusto food box order might like my content. That's a distribution channel.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and put a free copy of my magazine into each of those for everyone that lives in a certain area for a certain period of time. I don't know. But it like, even if you have a great idea and great content to put in a hard copy thing, being able to get it to people. I mean, the guys at Byline Times were saying that travel outlets are where they have sales holding up really well because you have that captive audience in an airport. People don't necessarily want to pay to log into the airline Wi-Fi, and they're still now reaching for a nice hard copy thing to read on a flight. So, I mean, that's a really niche audience if you're going down to that level, because it's really only rich people who fly.
There's bias still in there. That's, I think, another point we should make, that editorially, if you're producing a print product, you've still got your own bias in it as an editorial team.
Of course.
There's no way around it. And it's not surprising which way newspapers and their sister websites lean.
And when we look at the Telegraph, which is easily amongst the craziest in terms of the columns that get written by very strange people, Alistair Heath, writing.
Who used to edit City AM. He was my equivalent on the other side of the free newspaper divide.
Wow. But if you're chasing an ever aging demographic, your content is going to have to skew ever further right and strange, frankly, and out of touch with actually where the mainstream of the country's thinking is.
Which kind of takes us full circle, because the same challenges that we've been talking about with TikTok face the people who are putting together the print edition of the Telegraph. You've got to have content that's crazy engaging for an audience that has got...
It's crazy.
Oh, if there are any Telegraph readers listening in, we're sorry.
We're not saying you've got dementia, but maybe get checked out.
Exactly that.
So come on then, Kenny. What would a healthy recommendation for a system look like, both for social media platforms and for traditional legacy print media?
I'm kind of nervous about the idea of even suggesting a healthy recommendation system, because my deep fear is that what it would look like would be boring, like really dull, doing all the right stuff and doing stuff in a much more beige way. And it's actually, as a former newspaper person, that's not a publishing world that I'm really switched on by at all. But if you were looking at it from a relatively adult perspective, it would probably prioritize, diversity of sources, and I think really critically flatten that feedback loop, that doom loop that we've got ourselves into, where the algorithms are farming the same sort of content about the same sort of stuff back again and again and again, and then learning from that content and then producing more like it, because surprise, surprise, that's what people are watching because it's being fed to them. So that feedback loop, I think, is critical. And I don't know how you stop rewarding the emotional volatility that drives social media, because that's the business model. These are outrage engines, so the social media platforms, the big ones, outrage and high emotion will make people click. You don't have to like something to engage with it. And the moment you engage with it, there's advertising revenue. And so that side of things is very, very difficult to manage, because the moment you take that volatility out, your business model starts to fall to pieces. And I don't know genuinely what we can do from a regulatory perspective that doesn't involve kind of killing off a large part of the revenue stream for these companies. I'm not saying it's not something that should be looked at, but the problems it presents are really fundamental problems when we look at how the social media business model has developed from its early days. But I mean, essentially what we'd be looking at would be the opposite of everything that currently works, which is why we're stuck with the system that we've got. And on top of that, it's a global problem. It's not something that it's easy to legislate for on a country-by-country basis. You can block on a country-by-country basis if you want to go down that totalitarian route, but actually the bulk of the issues that we face are issues that are global, and the content we're seeing a lot of the time is global as well. So it ain't an easy one to deal with.
But if you're listening and you have a young person in your life, go out and buy them a paper this weekend and put it in front of them. And if you think that a full fat version of FT Weekend might be a bit much for them, maybe get them a copy of The Week magazine
Yeah.
as a nice entry level to reading a hard copy bit of slightly more thoughtful analysis.
And you can wrap your fish and chips in it on a Friday night. How good is that?
Quiet Riot. Get Popeye's Scary Good Freddy Fazbear Box with garlic palm tenders and cheesy bites with marinara sauce. Or try the deluxe box with the Cupcake Cup and a 20-ounce drink and see Five Nights at Freddy's 2, only in theaters. Love that chicken from Popeyes. Limited time at participating U.S. restaurants.
Quiet Riot. Last week's Sunday School show had some bonus good news included. Well, A, because you probably need it, and B, because we hadn't put any in the main show that week because of the budget and dedicating so much time to that. But we've decided to bring you another bonus. Grin and share it today.
Good news is welcome to me. Bad news is hell come to me. Good news. I want good news.
Kenny, what freshly laundered happiness are you going to spin in our direction?
Well, I wasn't just sure when I was thinking about the script whether or not both of us were going to be in a fit state to be able to carry an entire episode without breaking down in tears. So I dug around, and the question that I'm asking listeners is, what if doing your laundry, what if washing your smalls could actually free someone up in some ways rather than chaining them to the scrub board forever? Well, it turns out that roughly 5 billion people worldwide still wash their clothes by hand. And that's not some sort of gritty artisan choice, but it's a genuine burden. It's usually carried out by women and girls. It costs them up to 20 hours a week at a time, and it soaks up, as well as time, it soaks up opportunity and dignity as well. So enter something called the Washing Machine Project, which is a UK-based social enterprise, and it's behind essentially a flat-pack washing machine called the Diva. The organization's CEO is called Naviat Soni. He studied aerospace engineering at Queen Mary University in London, and after working as an engineer for Dyson, Nav moved to South India, where he made stoves with a group called Engineers Without Borders UK. And that's where he met his neighbour, who was called Divya. Her struggle with everyday tasks, including hand-washing clothes for up to 20 hours a week, inspired Nav to find a solution. So he promised her a washing machine, and he developed his first prototype when he returned back home to Blighty. And that prototype inspired Nav to start the Washing Machine Project back in 2019, and he called the machine Diva in honour of his neighbour from India. So it's a hand-cranked portable washing machine that can tackle a 5-kilogram load in a 30-minute cycle.
Hey, that's great.
It's good, and it's only a few minutes of turning that's required as well. You don't have to be there for the full 30 minutes. You soak a lot of this time. And in real human terms, it's saving time, it's saving water as well, and it's reducing what is hard physical labour doing washing the old-fashioned way.
Excellent.
They reckon they save about 75% of time and use 50% less water than compared with traditional hand washing. And, it's not just been about tinkering in a workshop. They have already shipped something like 500 of these machines to 13 countries, places like Mexico, Ghana, Iraq, among them. And they're hoping by the end of this decade to have reached about 1 million people worldwide. So it's a big old
Lovely.
goal. Yeah. So it's not about convenience, only about convenience. It's a quiet act of reclaiming time for rest, well, as if, but for work, for education, for being a kid, for being a parent. Because in many places, laundry isn't just an item that you check off. It's a burden that actually shapes your day and shapes your week, your opportunities and your possibilities.
Isn't it kind of incredible that we have been all bombarded with Black Friday ads and Cyber Monday ads and Christmas ads for gadgets we absolutely do not need when 5 billion people don't have the most basic equipment? Kenny, thank you for finding that story for us. Very lovely and very appropriate for Grin and Share It.
Quiet, Riot.
I tell you, Wilson, they're a nation of automatons, led by a lunatic who looks like Charlie Chaplin.
How dare you compare our glorious leader with that non-Aryan clown?
Oh, look here.
I am making notes, Captain. And your name will go on the list. And when we win the war, you will be brought to account.
You write what you like. You're not going to win this war.
Oh, yes, we are.
Oh, no, you're not.
Oh, yes, we are.
Whistle while you work. Hitler is at work. He's half army, so's his army. Whistle while you...
Your name will also go on the list. What is it?
Don't tell him, Pike.
Pike.
Europe is having a bit of a throwback moment. No, not to the bell-bottoms and fondue sets of our youth, though they're probably going to make a comeback anytime now, but to national service. France and Germany both announced plans this week to revive voluntary service schemes. Please, let's not get caught short if the world goes sideways again. But of course, it's not the old conscription model. Nobody's dragging teenagers from their happy place to peel potatoes in a barracks. These are flexible opt-in programs that mix community work, civil protection, disaster response, and optional military training. Basically, national service, but with fewer shouting sergeants and more pastel infographics. Why does this matter for us here in the UK? Well, I guess we're facing the same squeeze. Shrinking armed services, tougher security threats, chronic recruitment problems, and a political class in permanent denial about much of the above. When Europe starts rebuilding its civic spine, it forces the UK to ask awkward questions about its own. National service isn't just about defence anymore. It's about cohesion, resilience, and giving young people something more useful to do than perfect a TikTok stare. And whether we like it or not, and I know that many of you won't and will have your own opinions on this topic, the conversation could be coming our way. Kenny, what are France and Germany proposing?
They're rolling out stuff that's gone beyond the proposal stage now. So France is rolling out a voluntary national service scheme, which includes civic training, community projects, and optional military elements as well, because that underpins the reasoning behind this. Germany is exploring a social year model in which young people can opt for civilian service, for defence training, or, for emergency response roles and stuff like that. The vibe is much more sort of, don't panic, we're not shoving rifles into teenagers' hands. But also, there is this idea that, we need people to join the army, or at least something that's adjacent to the army, before things with our friend in Russia get any more awkward.
I mean, I guess now that we know modern warfare is less likely to involve men in trenches and much more likely to be drone-on-drone warfare, engaging young people who are pretty damn good at computer games could be a relatively useful and low-cost step to get them from that to being able to operate drones.
Yeah, and I mean, there's two sides to that. One is that we've seen in Ukraine that the drone warfare is one side, the tech side is very definitely it marks a huge change in how we wage warfare. But equally, it's a meat grinder out there as well. There is still a real need at times for boots on the ground. And so that deeply uncomfortable side of the national service debate hasn't gone away completely. It's being disguised and it's been eclipsed by the technology. But if things really go south, boots in the ground are still required at some point. So we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that somewhere down the line, that's a risk for anybody that gets involved with this.
So Sunak mooted this for the UK a couple of years ago, and the response, particularly from the armed services, it's worth saying, wasn't particularly warm and welcoming. But why should Britain care about this? I mean, obviously, we scrapped national service in 1960. Anyone legislating for this now will have not done it. You and I were not made to do it. Why do we think that what wasn't needed for us could well be needed for the young generation now?
There's multiple reasons, I suppose. I mean, one of them is that national service doesn't have to just be about guns in hands, as Germany and France are demonstrating. There are UK-based civilian, if you like, roles that have to be fulfilled in a time of warfare as well. It's about preparing people for a particular, the disciplines that are required if things go south. And also, of course, despite our national exceptionalism, Britain is not immune to what goes on elsewhere in the world. The UK's armed forces have struggled with recruitment for a long time now. Its reserve numbers have been anemic, all the while that security threats have been rising. Yes, a lot of the security threats come from a technological perspective, but they're there in the real world. And when the two biggest economies in Europe start reviving national service, I think Westminster has to at least pretend to think about it. And with Britain's ongoing debates about social cohesion, about youth opportunities, and indeed about defence readiness, that idea hits a whole bunch of political nerves. And I think one of the problems that we have is that the very idea of national service shuts down the debate before it gets a chance to start properly, to find out whether or not there are, positive things that could be taken from it. We've got to remember that, as a country, at some point we have to adapt to the world that we live in, not the world as we would like it to be. And the world as we would like it to be certainly wouldn't feature the sort of aggression that we've seen globally, but on our own doorsteps for the last couple of years.
Quiet Riot. How do I do it all during the holidays? 4 words. Shipped same-day delivery. With Shipped, I can order groceries from Albertsons, decor from Michael's, even gifts for my furry friend from PetSmart. Plus, my personal shopper brings everything I need that same day. That makes it a breeze to decorate, get my shopping done, and make time for all the holiday parties. Do it all this holiday season with Shipped. Download the app or visit Shipped.com. That's SHIPT.com. Quiet Riot.
I mean, one point that I wanted to make was around the growing number of young people in the UK who are not in education, employment, or training.
Yeah.
So as of a month or two ago, the statistics were 946,000 people in the UK aged 16 to 24 were classified as NEET. That's nearly 13% of everybody in that age group. And that was the same about the previous quarter, a bit of a decrease on the year before. Historically, young women have tended to be worse affected and more likely to be showing up in the NEET figures. But in recent years, that has been switching, and now neatness of young men is rising quite alarmingly. And it's
That's right.
certainly something that, the government is concerned about and has been, trying to tackle all sorts of things, largely at the welfare state end of the policy spectrum. But in the budget, did roll out a new load of stuff around apprentices for SMEs. There are countries in Europe that do things differently. I think in Austria in particular, there's more of a kind of work program, a
That's right.
guaranteed work program. So rather than giving young people who aren't employed or in training benefits to live on, they do get given work. They get given a job where they can learn skills. And I do wonder if that is something that is going to be more palatable, at least initially, in a country like the UK than anything even tangentially described as military service or civic service. Um,
Yeah.
particularly coming from a generation who didn't have to do that.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the optics of it are critical. What these sort of schemes cannot be seen to be doing is operating as some kind of a dumping ground for young people who have not yet managed to find their place in the world when it comes to jobs or what have you. And if we have a discussion that is centered around the idea of national service, and actually we should probably give it a better title, shouldn't we? But if that conversation includes national service as part of the education and training requirements that we think our young people need to give them a leg up, getting to that next stage of life. I think that changes.
Yeah, it's got to come with pay, with skills, with actual life opportunities, and it has to come with the vote. And I'm, segueing here into a bit of a bop on the nose to the Labour government, who do want to bring in votes for 16-year-olds, but who keep delaying the introduction of the bill. So this is the elections bill that should have been laid already. It's now looking like it might end up being a rollover bill that'll have to go into the next King's Speech rather than get sorted out this Parliament. Why do I signal the alarm on that? Well, because you need to have a few practice runs of votes at 16 to smooth out the problems that there might be with it, particularly now that we've got mandatory ID requirements to vote. You need to have a couple of big elections at local level before a general election. And if this bill doesn't get laid soon enough, then we won't have votes at 16 in time for the next general election. So listeners, if you want to write to your Labour MP and tell them to put pressure on the government to get a wriggle on with that bill, please do, because absolutely, if we're going to start asking more and more of young people and taking away more and more from them in terms of benefits, then really we need to be giving them the vote too.
What a cracking idea to, if not legislatively, then at least socially bundle the idea that what we're looking at here is ways of giving younger people who haven't, like I said earlier, found their place yet, giving them a package of things that shows that, yes, they're valued, but also helps them make that next step, and bundling all that together with the idea that, yes, 16-year-olds having the vote is probably a good thing. It's not the case that we have to, lash them together, but in terms of having one eye on the future, it just shows that we would be taking these issues seriously, I think.
Yeah.
The alternative, of course, is to just let things drift until it's too blooming late. I mean, it's not as if other countries haven't shown us different ways of approaching this as well. Norway's got gender neutral conscription, and it only selects what it considers to be the most motivated candidates. So that's essentially the exact opposite of what the old UK model was. It's like, I don't want to do this. Well, you're doing it anyway. Give me 10 press-ups. Sweden, 2017, Sweden revived conscription because of security concerns over there. But that's also selectively as well. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Finland is one of the most ready for war countries on earth. Well, it has to be, absolutely. And they've got near universal male conscription. But then, there are places like Israel, like South Korea, like Singapore, which have got very stringent conscription systems built in to their national identity. And I don't think anybody is suggesting that's the path we go down. But it's interesting to note that these are countries that we would consider to be, I suppose, very Western.
Well, Kenny, while we're talking about people doing their bit for others, today's call to action is for a group who put their lives on the line very, very regularly. And it's come in from our beautiful Ko-Fi backer, Bobby. He writes, "Dear team, the RNLI Christmas appeal recently appeared on my Facebook feed, and I went into the comments fearing the worst. I knew they had been given abuse for saving, quote, the wrong lives in the English Channel. My fear was justified. The amount of bile from the usual bunch of triggered F-wits was astonishing. I wondered if it might be worth giving them a shout out and linking to the appeal. I didn't follow their socials or donate before yesterday, so hopefully others would do similarly if they weren't aware of the issue. So everybody, our call to action this Sunday is to go and make a donation to the RNLI Christmas appeal. We'll leave a link in the show notes. Let's help out the people who are genuinely doing frontline, wonderful, amazing work. And hallelujah. Kenny, can I go back to bed now?
Yeah, you can go back to bed. I might do the same for myself.
That's it then for another Sunday School. Thank you everybody for joining us and for respecting my slightly tired voice, shall we say.
Mhm. Don't forget, please, to quietly like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Back us on Ko-Fi and visit our online bookstore too for some of the old-fashioned print stuff that we've just been talking about.
We're going to be back on Thursday with the regular midweek show. This week, returning brilliant, joyous guest Henry Morris will be with us. So until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend and remember to keep on rioting. Just please, pretty please, for my sake, do it quietly.
We love you all. Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Rees.
Quiet Riot. Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.